Hello, Hawks fans, and welcome to the Atlanta Sports District. I'm your host, Russell Spence, and this is episode 3. I'm coming to you just after the conclusion of our first game of the 2025-2026 season. It was a 138-118 loss to the Toronto Raptors. That was a frustrating watch. There is a lot to get into. And so I'm going to break it down quarter by quarter, and then I'm going to talk about each individual player, and then I'm going to talk about my thoughts that the league has to do something about certain things that are happening in the NBA. So starting off, we had our starters that we kind of expected. We had Trey, Dyson, Zach, Jalen, and Kristaps Porzingis, KP. Kind of interestingly, for a long time, I actually noticed this. We have a really, really hard time winning the tip. We had a hard time winning it with Clint, and we had a hard time winning it with Onyeka. We won it today. I'm really hoping that we start to win more opening tip-offs with Kristaps Porzingis as one of our players. I know it's a small thing, but I do think that it's nicer to get the ball in the first and third quarters to start. I like that. I just always have. And so I want to win the tip. We, early on in this game, really heavily struggled with the press. It was evident that they wanted to get the ball out of Trae Young's hands and into anyone else's hands. And I noticed a lot of times that player we went to as the escape valve, the release of the pressure on Trae, was not who you would think it was. It was always either Kristaps Porzingis or Jalen were the guys who were there ready to be that safety valve. And I would like to see that be Dyson. A lot of times Dyson was down the floor, not helping against the pressure. And when you have another guard on the floor who's not helping with the pressure, that can make beating pressure very difficult. It was not as bad of an issue later in the game because we always had to have Naw or Kennard on the floor because of Dyson's foul trouble issue that he was not playing very many minutes. But man, it was a really tough go of it in terms of breaking the pressure because I feel like we needed another guard back in the backcourt relieving that pressure, and Dyson's always on the floor. That's not a knock on Dyson. It's just I think as a coaching point, you would want to say, hey, make sure you're coming up to help your teammates here while they're really pressuring. There was a bunch of times they were like doubling Trae at 94 feet. That guy's not getting open if that's happening. Like you have to get another player that's a great ball handler, able to attack quickly up the floor to help with that kind of pressure. This will get to the main talking point I want to talk about in the first half, and that's our rotations. You can go back and you can look at my video of breaking down the roster for this year. My musings on this rotation has nothing to do with, I think, of the person or my wanting them on the team. I just do not think Keaton Wallace is a everyday rotation player. Our first substitution was bringing in Nickeil Alexander-Walker because Dyson was in foul trouble, and that's completely fine. Naw plays the exact same role. Then our next substitution brought on Kennard and brought on Keaton. When that lineup with Keaton Wallace came on the floor, they immediately made a run, and we immediately had to call timeout. When we get to the player portion, I'll talk about why I don't think that Keaton is a great player to be playing. But again, as I said in the roster breakdown, I think of him as a substitutional guard, not a play him every day guard. He is not the kind of player that you can just drop in the hat, put in the game, and he's going to help you win every game for 82 games. That's not the player Keaton Wallace is. He does not need to be playing right now. I would like to see us be playing Mo Gay more. He needs to be playing in the games. And we need to be covering our guard minutes with Trae, Dyson, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Luke Kennard. If you can cover the guard minutes with those 4 players, you really don't need a backup point guard. You don't need a 5th guard. You need more length. As I said, we gave up 138 points in this game. If you go back to my roster breakdown, what we need around Trae Young is not offense. We need defense. If you're playing Luke Kennard all the minutes that Trae Young does not play, he won't play many more minutes than that in the game. You won't have very many minutes with Trae and Kennard on the floor. There were way too many lineups like that today. When we had those lineups on the floor, it was easy pickings for their whole roster to score because we didn't have the personnel around Trae on the floor to stop the ball. You have to have players who can stop people when Trae Young is on the floor. It's a non-negotiable. You have to play players who can stop people when Trae's on the floor. So Kennard can't play a ton when Trae is on the floor. That means Kennard needs to be playing those backup point guard minutes when Trae Young is off the floor. Mo Gay is a 6'11", 7-foot, thick, super freak athlete who plays amazing defense. He's one of our best defenders on our whole team. Last year when Mo Gay was on the floor, we had a defensive rating below 100. It would have been the best in the league. We have to play Mo Gay more, and unfortunately that means I don't think that Keaton Wallace can play. Moving on, we then get a kind of upsetting set of circumstances where we have this run happens. They have to call timeout. When we come back from the timeout, Jalen goes through a portion of time where he is just dominating the game. To me, that's what I think that Jalen Johnson can do all the time. I think that Jalen is just realizing the kind of player he is. I'm really excited to see what Jalen can do, as I said in the roster breakdown. But during this one section of the first quarter, Jalen was going crazy, especially in the paint. That's the kind of stuff we have to have. I wrote in my notes here, the Raptors seem addicted to committing fouls in the first quarter. They had so many. I didn't write down the exact number, but legitimately it was like every possession they were committing a foul. And they weren't tic-tacky fouls. They were really earning them. At the end of the first quarter, I'm going to talk about this for a very short amount of time. I hate the 2-for-1 thing. We bring Trae back in the game, and he chucks up like a 41-footer. And Bob Rathbun, of course, on the broadcast said, oh, well, he was playing for the 2-for-1. I don't care. I think that every possession in a basketball game should be attempting to get the best shot possible. I love Trae. I mean, you can go back again, watch my roster breakdown. I love me some Trae Young. But that's not a good shot, no matter who you are. That's not a good shot for Steph Curry. That's not a good shot for literally any player ever, is a pull-up 41-footer. It's just not smart basketball. And I don't care if it's a 2-for-1. I don't care if you're thinking you're getting an extra possession. If you give up that possession and you don't get a good shot, it's like you didn't get an extra possession. There's no reason to do it. I wish that we would stop doing it. I don't know if it's a Quinn Snyder thing. I don't know if it's a Trae thing. Please stop with these 2-for-1. It doesn't work. And so at the end of quarter one, we are losing 36-34. Again, we had a really, really rough go of it when Keaton was on the floor, and the rest of the roster tried to make up for it. Quarter two runs around, and it's more of the same. Keaton Wallace comes back on the floor. They bully him because he's a 6-foot-tall player on defense. And I marked in my notes, we have our quote-unquote point guard that's on the floor 3 or 4 possessions in a row standing in the corner because he cannot do the point guard things. He can't handle, he can't pass. And so we have Jalen playing the point guard. Jalen was the one bringing the ball up the floor. Jalen was the one running the actions. Jalen was the one initiating pick and rolls. Jalen was playing point guard. But we have a 6-foot-tall player standing in the corner. If you're not going to have him have the ball, he's worthless on offense. And we'll get to why I think that. But Keaton makes a great play at one point and gets a steal, comes out of his shoe, slips on his sock, falls and hits his face on the ground, and breaks what they said on the broadcast was multiple teeth. Props to Keaton Wallace for being able to come back in the game after doing that. I know a lot of people would have been like, all right, I'm done for the day. But Keaton Wallace did end up coming back in the second half. And it was just, in my opinion, not super helpful to have him coming back. At one point, before that happened, we had 34 points at the end of the first quarter. We were 3 minutes in to the second quarter, and we had scored 1 point that was because a defensive 3-second field goal, free throw. So I'm looking at this and going, with Keaton Wallace on the floor for those 3 minutes, we scored 1 point. There's no spacing, there's no ball movement, there's no consistency, there's no connectivity. The offense looked horrible with him on the floor. And I'm not meaning to pile on and pile on and pile on. I'm just saying, in my opinion, with the limitations that Keaton Wallace has, you cannot play this player in this role. Nobody's hurt. I get that he's the only player on the roster that has technically beside their name PG written in as their position. But he's not a point guard, first of all. And second of all, there are other point guard style players that can play those minutes. Even if you don't want to play players like Naw or Kennard as your backup point guard, you also have Vit Krejci, who is better at the point guard things than Keaton Wallace is. It's unacceptable right now to be playing him with people fully healthy. Again, he's a substitutional player. If people aren't healthy, then don't play him. That's completely fine. But if people aren't healthy, then you can play Keaton Wallace. That's cool. But if everyone's healthy, he can't be playing. It's completely, you can't have it. So that happens. We have this bad run, this bad stretch where we don't score points. When Trey comes back in the game, we have already established that we're behind. When Trey comes back in the game, we're down 13. The largest lead that they had was 13 points during that stretch. Almost immediately when Trey comes back in the game, it's Trey, Naw, Zach, Jalen, and Kristaps Porzingis. We go on a big run, and we get it back within 4. It's a 9-0 run. Boom. We're back in it. During that run, I wrote down, Nickeil Alexander-Walker is a foul-drawing maniac on the offensive fouls. He got so many moving screen calls, so many charging, guys throwing elbow. He is awesome at that stuff. Even the loose ball fouls that happen, he's so good at drawing those. I know I said he was in the 99th percentile. I didn't realize just how many it was going to be. I mean, it was crazy in this first game how many offensive fouls he was able to draw. So after that run, we ended the half losing 65-59. Pretty simple math. That's a 6-point game. In the first half, we lost Keaton Wallace's minutes by 10. He was minus 10 in the first half. Which means in game minutes that we didn't have Keaton on the floor, we were plus 4 as a team. Now I know plus minus is not the greatest statistic, but I do think that does tell you we were outplaying them when he wasn't on the floor, and when he was on the floor, we were significantly being outplayed. Take with that what you will, whether or not you think he should be in the game or not. Coming out of halftime, I was hoping that we would establish some sense of normalcy, and we did not. All I wrote for the third quarter was that it's just sloppy. And about halfway through the third quarter, I wrote, it's still not an insurmountable lead. They were up 5. We were sitting there just playing sloppy basketball. We're turning the ball over. We're not communicating on defense. And I think a little bit of it is that thing I talked about in the team preview when I said that quite honestly, when you're integrating 3 new huge key contributors at the beginning of the year, when another team like the Toronto Raptors has complete continuity, they're not adding anyone new. In fact, their first round pick that they're probably going to play a lot of minutes, Colin Murphy-Boyles, is hurt. So they literally have nobody that wasn't there last year at some point. I know Brandon Ingram didn't really play for them, but he still was there. He was still getting integrated, learning the system, understand. They had no new players to integrate at all. Or if you say Brandon Ingram, they're at 1. Their continuity is very high, and you could see that. They were moving a little bit more crisply than we were, especially on defense. Their rotations were better, and their overall connectivity defensively was better than ours. And I think that will come with time when we get that continuity together. But right now, it was a struggle. The continuity just was not there. About midway through the third quarter, Scotty Barnes grabs Jalen Johnson on a drive and rips him to the ground in what I would call a non-basketball play. And when you have a foul that's committed, that's a non-basketball play, that's usually a flagrant foul. I thought that was very, very capable of being put down as a flagrant foul. It was a common foul that ended up being an and one because Jalen fought through the contact. But I thought that was a microcosm of the entire night. I mentioned earlier that they were addicted to committing fouls in the first quarter. There are certain teams in the NBA right now that are allowed to play a more physical brand of basketball than anyone else is. And the Toronto Raptors are one of them. And it's because of this mentality that they have. They will foul the mess out of you early in the game and slow the game down to a crawl. And then the referees will make the decision that, oh, if we keep calling the game like this, the game will never end. And so they stop calling as many fouls. And so then the team that's being extraordinarily physical gets to be extraordinarily physical all game long with no repercussions. At the same time, you have Dyson Daniels getting called for 5 fouls that I think none of them were fouls. I mean, the whistle he got tonight was just brutal. In the third quarter, he gets his 5th foul, and we take him out until basically the game's out of reach. I mean, it was a horrible whistle, a horrible night for Dyson, and not his fault. I felt so bad for him, and he still, in those limited minutes, had 2 steals and played well on the defensive end. He just did not get to make the impact Dyson can make because he got these insanely just soft whistles. I don't know what he has to do to get a better whistle. I noticed this was a trend last year where he would get some calls and I go, that's just not a foul. I don't know what to tell you. It's just not a foul. At the end of the third quarter, we had a 110 to 87 deficit. They were able to play a lot more aggressive than us, play a lot more downhill than us. They were getting the free throw line a lot more because of the way the whistle was going, and they expanded the lead to a untenable margin unless we had a comeback like we did against Chicago a couple of years back. It was not pretty. Pretty much the entire fourth quarter was the Hawks trying to either get free throws and foul bait or shoot threes. And it worked some. We had a couple of small runs. But at the end of it, with about 5 minutes left, we pulled everybody, pulled all of our starters, put in some reserves, and Mo Gay got to play. Good for Mo. I thought he played really well in his minutes. And it ended up being a 138 to 118 final score. So now I would like to go to the players' side and just talked about, I want to talk about how each player played, but I also want to go ahead and talk about why I don't think that Keaton Wallace can be an everyday rotation player. And again, it's nothing against Keaton as a human. I really like Keaton the human. I think he's a wonderful teammate. But it's just about on-court productivity. I talked about in the roster breakdown that there are 3 ways that a player can spread the floor. The first way is with a jump shot. So I'm going to talk about Keaton's jumper. In the NBA, he hasn't played enough minutes to get a big enough sample size. So I'm going to talk about, in the G League, his 55 game sample size he has in his G League career. In his G League career, he averages 4 3-pointers a game at a 34% clip. Now you could say, that's not that bad. 34%? That's okay. That is not a player that gets guarded in the NBA. They're going to make him show them he's going to make shots. So he's not spreading the floor with the jumper. We've already discussed in pretty great detail, he's not a very good ball handler and passer. That's the second way, is with your passing ability. If you're a great passer, you really had to be guarded, because if not, you'll just pick apart a defense with cutters. So you've got a guard, a point guard, who's not able to spread the floor with his jumper. He's not a very good ball handler or passer, so he can't spread the floor with his passing ability. And you're not going to throw lobs to spread the floor vertically to your 6-foot-tall player. He's not dunking on people's heads and sitting in the dunker spot. Like you see Gary Payton, though he doesn't really pass very well and doesn't really shoot very well, he can sit down in the dunker spot and dunk it on your head, and he can affect the game vertically. Keaton Wallace ain't doing that. So you can't have a guard that is clogging the paint the same way players like Clint Capella are clogging the paint. You can go back and watch how brutally clogged the painted area was when Keaton Wallace was on the floor. You can't play that. It's unacceptable. It's an unacceptable amount of spacing, and I am pretty much mind blown that we went into the season with that being our plan at backup point guard. So that's my first thing on the player's side. I'll talk about Keaton's stats here. I mean, looking at it, Keaton Wallace, he played 9 minutes. He had 0 points, 0 assists, 0 rebounds, 2 fouls, a steal, and a turnover, and was minus 11. That means you got 9 minutes of literally cardio from Keaton Wallace. He didn't even take a shot. You can't play that guy. I'm sorry. You can't. Next, I can talk about Mouhamed Gueye. We actually won Mouhamed Gueye's minutes by 5 because it was garbage time and he was playing very good defense. He had one absolutely insano block, which he is very known to do. Next guy, we'll talk about Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Nickeil had a rough day. He was 2 for 15 from the floor. He was 5 for 6 from the free throw line, had 4 rebounds and 4 assists. 10 points, but he was really pressing out there. And I think a little bit of it was that he was so rushed. He just needs to take some time to get kind of settled. And I noticed this in preseason, but again, it's a continuity thing. He's coming into a brand new offensive scheme. I thought that he might take some time to get acclimated to this Quinn Snyder system. People talk about it. It's kind of hard to understand exactly where you're supposed to be. I talked about it in the player breakdown with Mouhamed Gueye. I think the reason why he's not on the floor is because offensively, he doesn't always know where he's supposed to be. And that's a problem. I can understand that. But I think the defensive value is too much that you can't ignore it. Luke Kennard, I thought should have shot the ball more. There was a bunch of times I saw him give up some open threes. He was only 1 of 5 for threes, 2 of 7 from the field. He also had 4 rebounds, 3 assists. He was minus 16. And that's what I'm talking about with these lineups that have Trae and Kennard on the same time, on the court at the same time. Defensively, it's just you can't handle it. Only scored 6 points. Not the best debut for the 2 bench guys, but I think that they're going to be fine. But it was a rough one today. Onyeka played 30 minutes, and I thought he was really solid. 8 of 12 from the floor, 6 rebounds, had an assist, 18 points. Ended the game minus 19, but again, plus minus is a flawed stat. He was spending a lot of time on the floor with these Keaton Wallace, Luke Kennard, Trae Young, Luke Kennard lineups. Defensively, those ain't going to work. And so it was a rough go of it defensively for that. Dyson Daniels only played 23 minutes. Moving on to the starters. Only took 4 shots, 3 rebounds, 2 assists. Still had 2 steals, as I said, but 5 fouls. He was only minus 3. We actually played pretty well. He was on the floor, 4 points. But, yeah, the whistle he got was just ridiculous. And that's my biggest takeaway. I feel bad for him. I mean, it's his season debut, and he gets 5 of the weakest fouls I've ever seen. So let's clean that up from the NBA side. Zachary Bichasset is the next guy I'll talk about. 21 minutes. He had a really long stint twice where he was off the floor. We can't have that. He's playing too well. He needs to play more. I mean, 21 minutes is not enough. He was 7 of 13 from the floor, 2 of 6 from 3, had 2 rebounds, a block. He was minus 14 and had 16 points. If he plays more, that dude easily scores 20. And I think part of the reason why he didn't have a better rookie season was because we didn't play him enough. He needs to be playing more minutes. Any criticism I have of Quinn Snyder, it's not that I think he's a bad coach. I actually think he's a really wonderful coach. I think he's got one of the best offensive schemes in the league. But I really don't like his rotations. I have not liked them the whole time he's been here. And I'm really hoping that we start to adjust the way we go about things with our rotations and we start playing the players who are being effective more. Let's see the players who are playing well get a bunch of minutes. I don't think that should be too much of a hard thing to ask for, but so far it seems like it has been. He seems kind of glued to whatever his plan was. If a guy is really rocking it, like Zach was playing amazing in the first half, play that guy more minutes. Extend some of his time a little bit. Give him some more run. That's rewarding a player for playing well. That's okay. Moving on to Kristaps Porzingis. Played 26 minutes. Was 5 of 12 from the floor, 4 of 7 from 3, and 6 of 6 from the free throw line. Had a great efficiency day. Had 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 blocks, only 2 fouls. He had 20 points. On paper, it's a really good game. I will say the rebounding was an issue. He needs to rebound the ball better. Defensively especially. We gave up a lot of offensive rebounds, and that was kind of the tail of the tape. It was not good on the offensive or the defensive glass for us today. And we need him to be better. You're a 7-3 player. Rebound the ball better. Fight. Claw. Bleed for the team. Get some rebounds. But I don't think he was the problem today. Moving on to Jalen Johnson. He had a wonderful game. 7 of 13 from the field. 0 of 2 from 3, 8 of 10 from the free throw line. I'm really liking what I'm seeing from him on from the free throw line. That was a big problem last year, and it seems to be getting better. I hope that continues. He had 7 rebounds, 8 assists, a steal, a block, 22 points. He was minus 15, but again, he was kind of making up for those lineups that were quite pitiful defensively in the way we were deploying our players. Jalen looked like a superstar. I mean, he's across from Scottie Barnes, who people think is a star, and he looked really unstoppable. I was really impressed. And if we have that Jalen Johnson all year, I'm going to be banging the drum. All-star game. All-NBA. Give this guy some foot. This is crazy. He's an amazing player. And Trae Young. He was 5 of 14 from the floor. I would like to see Trae shoot the ball more. Be more aggressive. He was 11 of 13 from the free throw line. Only 1 of 7 from 3. Trae Young is best when he's attacking. He needs to shoot. I get that he needs to shoot threes. But he is awesome going downhill. He's unstoppable. They were sending so many double teams at him. I get that it was hard. I would love to see him be a little more aggressive. Get downhill, get downhill, get downhill. Into the game with only 1 rebound, but 5 assists is not enough. We need to be making these shots that he's getting us. 1 steal, only 2 fouls was 4 fouls, only 2 turnovers. Was minus 14 and scored 22 points. That is not your stereotypical Trae Young game, but we didn't have a stereotypical game. I think that he will have much better games. I am on record talking about I think he's going to once again go up in assists per game. I think he's going to average 12 assists per game. He might break the record for most assists per game in a season. He's that kind of passer, and he has that kind of talent around him. But again, it's early in the year, low continuity. It's going to take a little bit of time for them to get together. My closing thoughts are going to be about the league. You can't keep letting teams play like this. I mean, we have a lot of players getting hurt against teams that play the way that the Toronto Raptors played tonight. This extremely aggressive and overbearing, overly physical, ridiculously physical, fouling on every opportunity, at every turn. They're committing a foul, knowing the referee cannot call every single one of them. We saw Jalen get hurt against this exact team last year, tore his labrum. Orlando plays that same way. We see Vit Krejci fall, get undercut by Jonathan Isaac, and get hurt in a game like that. There are a bunch of examples of players getting hurt against the Miami Heat, who have for years played this style of basketball. And you can say all you want, Russell, you're just being soft. It's a soft game already, and you're just being even more soft. No, I love the game of basketball. And what I watched today was a UFC match. I mean, we literally had a dude have multiple teeth knocked out in this game. It was a UFC fight. That's not basketball. And all of this that you say, well, the preseason's called one way, and the regular season is called one way, and the postseason is called one way, that's not correct. That's not the way it should be. Because basketball is basketball. A foul is a foul. If you have a player commit a foul, if the rule book, if you opened it and read it and said that's a foul, you should call the foul. I don't care if one team fouls 100 times, then they need to move their feet, they need to learn to defend without fouling. I do not care what you think about whether the game's soft or not. If you don't like the rules, change the rule book. But things that we're doing tonight were overly physical, were dangerous to our team, and that has happened against the Hawks a bunch of times over the last few years. Kind of the mold to beating the Hawks. Going back to like before we had DeJounte Murray, the Miami Heat in that series where they just beat us to death. The book on beating the Hawks was you can beat them up. That's not basketball. You need to enforce the rules that are in the rule book. If it's a moving screen, it's a moving screen. If they're hand checking, there's a hand check rule in the rule book, in the NBA. Call it every time. that goes to carries, travels. I mean, there's so much stuff happening that's against what's in the rule book in the game today. It is absurd the way the games are being called. And almost every game I find myself going, this is one of the worst officiated basketball games I've ever seen in my entire life. And it happens over and over and over and over again. I'm not upset with the Hawks. I kind of expected there was going to be these continuity errors. It happens. I am upset that I feel like the Hawks were ripped away from their ability to compete in this game by the officials. That's not okay. It's never going to be okay. And I hope to goodness that the NBA fixes it. That's my spiel. I'm tired of seeing teams be able to play like barbarians. Play basketball. With that being said, we have another game coming up very soon. I'm planning on having probably one episode coming out talking about some smaller things. I kind of want to give my thoughts on the G League video coming up soon. So that's going to be my next video before the next Hawks game. But coming up, we've got another game, and I'm going to be here to talk and give my thoughts about what's happened in the game. Again, if you want to see a person who just loves the Hawks talk about loving the Hawks and get my perspective as just a guy I've seen every game for 13 straight years. If you want that, subscribe, like the video, comment, ask questions. I'm here. I'm going to be here for the foreseeable future. I plan on doing this for a long time. So show me some love, give me some likes, give me some subscriptions, and let me know what you think about this officiating problem that the NBA has. Let me know if you agree, if you disagree, and have a great day.